Well, the story of New Testament Christian Church actually begins in Building 59 of Eastman Kodak Company. And that's where I met Tom Wells.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom Wells and I became good friends almost immediately. And I knew Tom was a Christian in the sense that he read his Bible. He talked about God a lot, but I thought I was a Christian. I considered myself a Christian. I believed in God. I went to church. I just knew he was different than me.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of the year, towards the end of the year, we had a family medical crisis.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
My sister Carol, who's one of my best friends, and she had 2 little girls at the time, was given a pretty dire prognosis.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't look promising, and she was going to need surgery at the end of that year, in December of that year. So I went to work the day of her surgery. I'd planned to leave at lunchtime and to go to the hospital to see how things were going. And Tom Wells ran into me that morning and asked me, normally we would go to the gym and play basketball on our lunch hour. And he asked me if I was going, and I said, not today, Tom. And I told him just briefly what was happening. And he said, Jim, can I ask the other Christians in the building to pray for her? And I said, sure, absolutely, that would be great. So Tom came to see me sometime, well, around break time. He came to see me. So I told him this maybe 8 o'clock, 8:30.
Yeah.
And about break time, he came to see me, and I was in the dark. Some people think I'm always in the dark,
Yeah.
but I was working in the dark at that time.
In a dark room.
In a dark room, yeah. And Tom came in the dark, so I couldn't see him. But he said, Jim, the Lord told me that your sister's going to be okay. Well, that just shocked me. It's like God spoke to him. He said God spoke to him. So number one, that makes him sound a bit crazy to me.
Yeah.
And second of all, it's like, why would he go out on a limb like that? Because what if she wasn't okay? I had told him it was not a promising situation. So anyways, through that whole situation, my sister was okay.
Yep.
Everything turned out different than the doctors had predicted. And through that, I started walking with the Lord. I gave my life to Christ. I started walking with the Lord. Peggy then came to the Lord through Tom. Our whole family, basically.
Everybody.
Came to Christ. And so Tom invited us to go to church with him out in Brockport. That's where he was living at the time. And so we joined him, and we just fell in love with it right away.
Yes.
It was a small church, but it was so dynamic. They were having multiple services. It was back during the Charismatic Renewal in the mid-'70s.
It's a small church.
Very small. And we just loved it there. Well, a short time after, Tom felt led to go back home, which to him is northern New York. And so he left to go home, and another church started out of the church we were going to. It wasn't like a church plant, but what happened was the youth pastor, or the guy that was really ministering to the people on campus at Brockport State, that was kind of his ministry, he wanted to branch off and do his own ministry, continually ministering to the young people at Brockport State College. And he called it Founders Campus Church. No idea was he was going to start a church on campus. Well, immediately, people from the community started coming, and it became a community church.
Yeah.
And right about that time, I was telling Peg, we should, Tom's gone, we really should start to look for a church maybe closer to home.
Closer to home.
Yeah, we were traveling maybe 16 miles one way to go to church. And we enjoyed it. It was fun, but it's like, it's time to change. So before we did that, I said, let's start doing that. And you had some friends going to Founders Campus Church, and you wanted to go there.
Yes, I did.
At least try it.
Yes,
said,
I
Jim,
did.
I want to go there once.
And you said, are you going to be a follower?
I didn't want to go. I wanted to find a church close to home. But you insisted, or you really wanted to go.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, we'll go there one time. Now, this church was meeting over a storefront on Main Street in Brockport. So as far as parking goes, there's was none. And when you went in, you went straight up these stairs, straight up. I mean, I don't know, there was probably 20 stairs there. It was a lot of stairs, straight up to the second floor. And the church consisted of a big room, basically, that's all it was. And in the corner, they had partitioned off a little area for the nursery.
Yeah.
So we went there, and at that time we had only our firstborn, and I went there just to please her and said, okay, we'll make the best of this, is fine. And I went to bring our son to the nursery, and a guy there who's now become a good friend of mine, Larry. Larry was there sitting nursery, and I walk over there, and a smiley face, he goes, "Now, who's this?" And I said, "Well, this is Scott." And I hand him, "Oh, Scott, we're going to have so much fun today, and we're going to..." And he was just so warm and embracing, and as soon as he said that, now the service had not started. There was no, I don't know what the worship was like, hadn't heard any preaching. Immediately, the Spirit of God said to me, "This will be your home. This is where you're supposed to be."
Right.
So, if you're sitting nursery or doing kids' church or doing things like, you might think that's menial in some ways,
Right.
but it's not. It really isn't. God used that nursery worker to touch my heart and immediately to say, "This is where I want you." So that's where we started going to church.
Yes.
And we kind of grew with the church. I became an elder there. We were serving there. And at that time, I don't know, Peg, there was probably around 25 people or so, would you say, coming from Rochester,
From the
Greece area,
Rochester area, yeah.
out to church?
Quite a few, 30 people.
Up to 30, maybe 30, that were going to church out there for whatever reason. And the pastor had a vision to start a church in Greece to serve those people. And everybody assumed that there was one particular brother that was going to be the pastor because he was very pastoral. He's a big teddy bear, loves people, very faithful,
Really
great guy.
Mm-hmm.
And they all thought he was going to be the pastor.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And that was what everybody was counting on, and that was what we were gearing up towards. And the pastor had done a little training with him and myself and a couple other people. And he was
How
like,
many
"Jim..."
years was that now? Had we been going there then?
By then, we were going there for 4 years,
Okay. Mm-hmm. Right.
from 77 till 81.
Okay.
This was in about 80, so we'd been there 3 years.
Okay.
And so the pastor said, "Jim, if nothing else, you could be his right-hand man and help him and stand with him." I had a job at Kodak that I really enjoyed, and I was doing well there. My boss was a very aggressive go-getter. He was probably the most recognized, most influential person in our building, Building 59, and he took me under his wing, and he said, "I'm going places, and you're coming with me." And so that was what I thought my future was. So we were all gearing up for that, and then kind of at the last minute, as we got close to starting the church, this brother said, "It's not me,"
Right. Right.
and it shocked everybody.
He actually got sick over it.
Yeah, he wants to serve God, but he said it's not God's call for me, and he just couldn't do it.
Couldn't do it.
He couldn't do it. So everybody was disappointed, and everybody's like, "Okay, now what do we do?" So we just continued I just continued to go to church. It's like, okay, that's the way it is. That's the way it is. And we were at a retreat up at Delta Lake where Camp Shiloh now is. So that's had a major role in my life and ministry. We were at a retreat of all the elders in this church and the deacons. We were all together on a retreat, and we were going over things, and I'll never forget, the pastor said, while we're all talking there, he said, "This whole idea of starting this church in Greece, God won't let me drop it, and we need to do it." And in front of everybody, he said, "And I'm convinced Jim Crowley is supposed to be the pastor." And I sat up and said, "There's another Jim Crowley in this. I didn't even know the guy. He's got my name. Another Jim Crowley here." And he said, "Jim Crowley, you're supposed to do it." And it's like, "Are you serious?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm convinced you're supposed to." So that caught me by surprise.
Yep.
I came home, told Peg,
Very
"Guess
much
what?
surprised.
Guess what happened on this retreat, Peg?"
Oh, good.
And being the woman she is, we were all both caught off guard. But being the woman that she is, she said to me, "Jim, if that's the will of God, that's what we need to do."
Right. Yep, 3 kids.
Give up Lori had just been born, so we had those 3 kids.
You
And
had 9 and 3/4 years in at Kodak.
yeah, I was close to getting vested there. And Lori had just been born, and so, having little kids and then Lori on top of it. Okay, well, we won't go there, but we had our hands full. And I wanted to say yes, I wanted to do the will of God, but I wasn't sure. I couldn't just walk out on my career without knowing it was God. And so I said, "I'll pray about it." Well, 1 month went by, 2 months went by. This was in the fall of 1980. And I just wasn't getting anything. And I said, "Lord, I need to know if this is you or not." And so in those days, I used to walk to work so that I could have the car, but occasionally I'd take the Kodak bus. The Kodak bus, the inner plant bus, went right behind our house.
Right.
And so I could take it, if I wanted to get home or get to work quickly. and then I just walked around the corner. And one day I'm on the bus coming home, and this is on my mind, but I wasn't really thinking about it. And as I'm sitting on that bus, I hear the words, "For this reason were you born, and for this cause came you into the world." Now that's what Jesus said. He said, "For this reason was I born." That's from John 18:38. I'll never forget that. And the Lord spoke to me, and it just rattled me. It was almost like a audible voice. It wasn't, but it was so impacting to me. It's like, okay, God, I guess that's what you're saying to me. And I said, I needed another sign. I needed something else just to be sure. And right after that, the Lord spoke to me from Colossians 4:17, and it says this. It says, "Tell Archippus to take heed to the ministry I've given him, and that he fulfill it."
Oh,
And so that was Paul speaking to the church in Colossae.
that's pretty direct.
And it's like, oh, okay, Lord, out of the mouth of two witnesses. So I knew exactly what God was saying. And so we committed to starting a church
We did.
with these 30 or so people
Right.
that were committed from this area that we knew all of them very well. So we needed a place to meet, and there wasn't a lot of options, but we decided to see if the Greece YMCA on Long Pond Road would accommodate us, and they did. They said they would love to have us there, so they gave us a big room.
Big room.
It's changed now because it's had some renovations. I think there was a fire. And
Yeah.
so it's not the way it was, but as you come in right to the left, a great big room. It's called the Wegman Room, actually.
That's right. That's right.
Most people know what that's about. So the Wegmans donated that, and then off that, so the big room that we use each week, we had to set up all the chairs,
All the
set up
chairs.
sound equipment,
Yep.
and
Every
then
week.
take it back down. And right off of that hallway, there was two rooms. One was used for nursery.
Nursery, yeah.
One was used for
Kids' church,
kids'
right?
church.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's what we did. And so on March 15th, the Ides of March, out in 1981, out in Brockport, New York, at Founders Community Church, hands were laid on Peg and I was ordained. And the very next week, we held our first service, March 22nd, 1981, the Greece Y. So they sent us out. I had no experience in ministry whatsoever. They just believed in us.
Right.
They stood with us. They sent us out. And we ventured out in faith
That's right.
for that first service. I'll never forget that first service. I was a nervous wreck.
Oh, wasn't it one of the ladies that went to the church? She made a cake in the shape of the town of Greece
Correct.
to commemorate the fact that we were being established in Greece.
Yep.
So
Yes, you did.
I guess, it was nerve-wracking because it's like I was always saying, well, what are we going to do for work? But I guess in the bottom of, in the depth of my heart is like, well, I'll go with what God is saying. So, pretty much, right?
Yeah. And although we started the church and it was a step of faith, we did have the church in Brockport behind us.
Yes. They
And I know
backed
one
us
of the
a little
things I
bit.
was really nervous about was my pay.
Yeah.
And we just said, let's find out what God wants. And I remember having that conversation with the pastor after we'd committed and we're ready to start. And I said, by the way, Pastor, how much does a pastor make? How much am I going to get paid? And he said, we'll match whatever you're making right now. And they matched my salary at Kodak. Minus the bonus that came every March.
Yeah. No
But
bonus.
they matched my pay. So the sacrifice in that regard was very minimal.
Now, how much was that per week? I thought it was like $200 a week.
It was almost 300. It was like 280.
A week.
1981, yeah. So that's how we started. And things went well at the Y. We grew there.
Yeah.
The Lord blessed us there. And so the next step was finding a place to build a building. And so we had kept our eyes open, and this plot of land came available off of Mill Road in Greece. Runs between North Avenue and Long Pond.
Right.
And there's this plot of land, and I saw it, and there was a particular, I don't remember his name, Peggy, but there's a particular real estate agent who worked for Knocknagle, and his name was everywhere, houses for sale, and you always saw him. So I called him, and I told him, we're looking for land. I saw this land. I went and met him. He said, okay, I'll put in an offer for you. And we came up with a price that was he said, this is pretty reasonable. There should be no problem. And I was all excited about it. We talked it over with the elders. We prayed it through. And I was at home having dinner with the family, and I get the phone call. It's the realtor, and he said, Jim, I'm sorry to tell you this, but a developer got there before us, and he bought the land.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, my heart sunk, and I was so disappointed. It's like I had my sight on that land. I thought that would be a beautiful plot of land to build the church, and so it's okay, God, you got something else, but I really didn't know where to look. A lot of land was expensive at that time.
Very expensive.
So we were living at that time in Rochester, right at the border of Rochester and Greece, near Mount Reed Boulevard. And Peg and I were out one day, and we were going down English Road, and we came up North Avenue to go to Ridge Road for whatever reason. We didn't normally go this way.
No.
We didn't really have a reason to. And as we were coming up North Avenue, heading south, coming up towards Ridge Road, there's all this wooded land. And you saw a sign.
A sign.
What did that say?
For sale.
For sale. Just a little sign for sale
Nunzio.
with a phone number.
Right.
And
Right.
so there's the phone number. And so, okay, and I'm looking, it's just all woods. It's just all woods. So it's like, well, let's look into it. So I call the number, and I find out that there's like 12 acres of land
12.
or so that was available. And talking to the man, he was an older gentleman, and I told him what we wanted to do. He thought we were going to build houses because that's what he was hoping for, would be
Right.
a nice tract of land for housing development. And I said, no, actually, I'm a pastor, and we're going to build a church. Well, this was an old Italian gentleman. His name was Nunzio Greco. And Nunzio, as soon as I said we're going to build a church, Nunzio, I heard a pause, and he goes, I help you build a church. And I said, well, I don't really find, I help you build a church, he said. I said, oh well, okay, Nunzio, you can help us build the church. That'd be great. So as it turned out, the reason why the land is as it is, there was frontal lots here, and the frontal lots were more expensive than the back part. So we took just 3 front lots. That's why the land, as you come in, the driveway and over the edge of the building, it's like that, and then it goes way wide.
Yeah.
And we bought all that extra land. So the land we didn't buy was the frontal lots that were more expensive. So he gave us a great price on that. It turned out to be like 9.5 acres that we actually got. And that was in 1984. And it was all wooded land. And so one of the deacons in the church, he had a friend with a bulldozer. He called his friend, and Bobby, this guy Bobby, he came down and started bulldozing and started clearing the land.
Yep.
And then we came down.
We had clearing land parties.
Oh, constantly coming and cutting down trees and cutting up the
Cutting
trees
them
he
out
knocked
to the
down
road.
and carting them out and just clearing the land
Yeah.
and getting it ready. It was all trees. The whole lot was trees. And shortly after that, we contracted with a builder, Lefroy Builder in Henrietta, and they put up the building for us. That was in 84, late in 84, beginning of 85. And then we, meaning people in the church, led by Mickey Maddle, who was down here day and night
Yeah.
for
Mickey was.
almost 6 months. Mickey and a team of people built the whole inside of the church. Now, at that time, the inside of the church consisted of what is the foyer, and the stairs going down the atrium with the foyer. That's where you entered the church.
Right.
Right there.
Right.
The stairs coming up were on the outside.
Right.
Not the stairs we have now, but they were there. That's what they were. And then you came into the building, came into the foyer, and over in the corner to the left, which is now the cleaning closet,
Right. Right.
okay, out right next to my office, were stairs to go down. So you went up 13 stairs to come into the building, and then if you had a kid to bring to the nursery, you went down 13 stairs. So that's what the building was like, and we moved in here in June of 1985.
Right.
That was our very first service here in the building.
Right. And we had complications. Remember, they were going to shut us down because we started a school at the same time.
Yeah, we did start a school right that fall. We were committed to Christian education. The building inspector came down and told me, no uncertain terms, looked me in the eye and said, if you open that school, I'll be here to shut you down. Well, we built the whole building to code,
Right. Right.
so there was no problem with the code.
Egress windows and everything.
But they wanted us to have a special permit. There was hoops they wanted us to jump through, which I objected to, saying we're a church and we're going to teach our kids. That's what we do. Yeah. To you, we can only teach them on Sunday, but to us, we're going to teach them every day we want to, every day of the week. So, so he threatened to shut us down. We started with just a kindergarten class
Right.
that fall, just to get started. And
There you are.
I was there for the first day of school, waiting for him to come. It was a Wednesday.
Yeah.
And he never showed up.
Never
And
showed up.
He never, and I think Lori was in that class.
Yeah.
Right?
she
Lori was the very first one. Went
Mm-hmm.
for our kindergarten. Yeah. So that's how the church, excuse me, started. The building was built. We've had 2 additions on to the building. One came in the mid-90s because we just ran out of room, not so much in the sanctuary, but for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
we added on almost the exact same size of the building. So the lower level was really needed. And
Right.
it became classrooms. We had a big fellowship hall
Right. Right.
for the kids. And then behind our present sanctuary is a whole nother room. Again, that would double the size of our sanctuary, which we've not tapped into yet. But the problem with that is that we wanted a fellowship there, but after church, for people to want to stick around, they would come out of the sanctuary, go downstairs, all the way to the end of the hall to have a cup of coffee or to hang
yeah.
out. And so that really didn't work out too well. And if I was down there fellowship with people that were leaving, I couldn't connect with them. So we lived with that, but then that led to us in the beginning of 2000, and by the middle of 2000 we said we really need to do something else, and that's where we came up with the idea, the elders came up with the idea of putting on the atrium.
Right.
So that you could come in on grade, you could go down a few stairs to the lower level, you could go upstairs, and now we could fellowship right there.
Right. Right.
And we would be able to capture people
Yeah, that was a big addition.
more readily. So
Mm-hmm.
2
And it was
additions,
a wonderful
2 additions in
accomplishment.
the time we've been in this building.
Yeah.
Yeah, both of them served a purpose, and both of them were desperately needed.
We also got the lift, remember, that goes from the different levels. And before the addition, if you were handicapped, okay, you had to go outside the
To the
building,
side, to the north
the actual
entrance.
outside of the building, and go around it to be able to come back in for the lower level.
Yeah,
Very,
So
very
it met-
handicap friendly.
it met a bunch of needs, actually, which we're so grateful for. It's been a tremendous blessing to the church.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
During our time as a church, in these 40 years, we've had 3 different pastors here, 3 different senior pastors. Unfortunately, I've been every one of them. So, because my life has changed in those 40 years. It started out, I was just
Very green.
green behind the ears, right?
Yep.
I didn't know what I was doing, and trying to find out who I was and establish my own ministry and learning how to minister. And had a lot of support, had great people around us
Yeah, we
always.
did.
Not just from Brockport, but Tom Wells stayed with us, Bill Norton, and various other people that we got to know very well. So that was that season, and then in the mid-90s or so, we went through another season, and during that time, the Lord was speaking to me. Things had changed a lot in the church and just in church in general. And the Lord had spoke to me about giving the ministry away. It was kind of the key. And so we always had kind of home groups. We started the cell ministry, and we did some things with cell ministry. And the idea was raising up leaders, doing really what God calls us to do in Ephesians 4. And that is the ministry is supposed to not do the ministry, but it's supposed to equip others to do the ministry. And that became my real strong focus. And we raised up a number of great leaders here, people in the ministry, through that season, because that was really what the Lord was saying. We had some dynamic people teaching, and Don Bornjoren became ordained, and all helped open up Grace House, Lori Peg, and various people, which we were just giving the ministry away and saying, this is your call. This is what you're supposed to do, and the pastor's supposed to equip you.
Right.
So that was in the mid-90s, and then I had another major season in which the Lord spoke to me and changed me and the ministry here, and that was, maybe 10, 12 years ago. I had a book that was written by Paul Johansson, one of my heroes in the faith and a great man of God, who's been the Elam Bible Institute president, and he's held very other offices, just a tremendous man of God. He wrote a book called Free by Divine Decree. Excuse me. And it's a treatise on the book of Romans. And so I read it, but the whole thing about that book was grace. It was all grace in a way I'd never seen it before. Now, I understand grace. You're saved by grace.
Right.
So we all understand grace, but not like Brother Paul brought it out in that book. And right at that time, someone in the church had given me a book. And when people give me books, I commit myself to read them because he wants me to read it. So it was a book, and it was by a guy I never heard of before by the name of Joseph Prince. And I set it in my pile of books to be read. And right after I read Paul Johansson's book, I read Pastor Prince's book.
Okay.
And grace exploded inside of me.
Yeah.
I mean, it exploded inside me. I was getting visions, revelations, understanding of grace in a way I never had before. Never. And it totally transformed my life. And I began to live grace and began, of course, what's in me is going to come out of me. So that's what I began to preach. And that's what we began to focus on. And we had a grace revolution here.
Yeah.
And people's life were dramatically impacted when they really understand grace and the love of God, how good God is. So those are the 3 seasons of my life that I've gone through. And during that time, now you've fulfilled different roles in the church.
Yep.
And what I love about Peggy is she's just so committed to doing whatever. She's a real servant. She's an ox. She's just willing to do whatever it takes. And so in our early days, she was a mom. And you didn't really have any public ministry.
No.
Because we had 5 little ducklings that followed her around.
Nursery.
That she had to keep in order. And when my kids were in church, they were well behaved.
Yes.
They were orderly. Not because I was the pastor, but just because that's the way kids should be, right? And her ministry were our children.
Right.
Pouring herself into our children. And it wasn't until they got a little bit older that you started to step out and take a different role in the church.
Little bit by little bit.
Little by little.
Yeah, because I was pretty, I would think, insecure.
Yeah. But that was what the Lord had called you to do, to just do that. But then as you stepped out, you weren't as comfortable with public ministry. But people have looked to you, Peg, because you're a great example of womanhood, motherhood. And people see that in you, and they want to follow
I
that.
remember in our old house, I was doing the dishes, I believe. And it was like, at that time, way before all of this, that, I wanted to do something or be a part of something, or, and I was like asking the Lord what kind of ministry, is for me. And that's when he actually said, well, I'm not going to use you in outside ministry because your ministry is to your children. For what good would it be if your children are lost? So,
yeah,
that's
paraphrase
when
of Mark 8:36. So what would it profit you if you gain the whole world and lose your own children, so to speak?
So that's why I invested in my children, our children.
Yeah, and you did a great job with that.
So
I think sometimes there's a pressure on pastors' wives to be the woman's leader or to play the piano, which we wouldn't want you to do that. But you know what I'm saying? There's kind of an expectation,
a lot of
kind of
expectation
classical, the
from
pastor's
people's-
wife does things, but
Right.
we never allowed that to happen.
No.
The thing about ministry that I've always loved here in New Testament that I learned from other pastors that I was close to is you have to be yourself. And I could only be myself. I can't be anybody else. I can't be Kenneth Copeland or Joel Osteen, or I have to be Jim Crowley, and I allowed you to be Peggy Crowley. Just be who you are.
Right.
Whatever God's called you to do, you do. Do the best of your ability, whatever that means.
Yeah. Another thing that was very astounding, I guess, to say, is that usually pastors are very busy. They're called out a lot, and their kids suffer because of it. And the Lord has been so good to us in that Jim has been able, as a pastor, to be able to pretty much attend just about all of the children's events and games, and always to be there in support of them. And never really interfered too much. I think only one time there was but otherwise you were always able to be there with the kids.
Well, the kids were our priority,
Yeah,
both of us,
yeah. So
always.
that was God being faithful.
Mm-hmm. In faithfulness, we can say we've been through many challenges, many trying times.
Yeah.
Some of them brought on by ourselves, some things just life brings to you. And I can honestly say through all of that, God has been incredibly faithful. We've never skipped a beat, never went without anything, either in this church or in our own personal lives. Never.
Yep. Even to the last minute.
There's a few last minutes,
Yep.
for sure,
Yeah.
but that's how our faith grows.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, we've been blessed incredibly.
Absolutely.
And so I'm so excited about what God has done in this church, and of course the future of the church now, as we're in a whole new season, and it's a very exciting time. And I know Pastor James, Pastor Lori are going to do a great job
That's right.
in the future. I have 100% confidence in that, and I am so excited about it. I'm excited to see it happen. My role is changing, but I love what God is doing. I still want to serve God. I'm honored that I can still be here. My hope is that my real desire is that I'm going to die in this church. Well, not in the church. Well,
No,
hopefully
but
somewhere else, but
still attending the church.
Yes, but this church, this is my church. Not
It's
just
our
because I
home.
started. This is our
It's
home.
a home.
This is where we want to serve. This is where we want to grow old together and help in any way we can. It would be an honor to serve under the Boltons and the vision they have and what God's going to do through them. And I want to add whatever I can to make this church as strong as possible. I know, Peggy, I know, we did the best we could with what we had,
Right.
which is all you can do.
Right.
And God
exactly.
honored that
Yes,
in
he
a great
did.
way. But I know the best days of this church is still ahead. There's so much more that God has for this church.
Absolutely.
And I hope to get to see at least some of that
Yeah, we
with my
will.
own eyes.
Yeah. That's good.
So thank you for being a faithful partner
Partner.
through this whole time.
Helps.
40,
Remember?
40
Helps.
years. 40 years, Peg.
I know.
It's been 40 years.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
It's been a long time. But it's really been, and I got to say this from the bottom of my heart, it has been an honor and a joy to serve the Lord. It really is. It's challenging. Ministry is challenging.
Yeah.
Ministry is taxing. Ministry can expose different things in you and can sometimes bring out the worst in people when you're dealing with situations. But through it all, I wouldn't change anything.
Right.
I've loved serving the Lord. I've never looked back. I remember when I left Kodak, my boss, who loved me like a son. He wasn't a believer. He just really liked me and wanted me to work for him all of his life.
Right.
And I remember him saying to me as I walked out the door, he tried to talk me out of it
Right, you did.
because we had just a short time to go and I could have been vested. But he said to me, Jim, if this doesn't work out and you ever want to come back, you just call me. You can come back anytime. And I looked at him and I said, Bob, I appreciate that. Thank you so much, but you'll never see me again. This is God's will. I've turned the corner and I'm never looking back.
Right.
And we
And
never
we haven't.
And we never have.
Right. It's just been home. You know, it's my second home. You know, to come to church and bring the kids and learn about the Lord and just I don't know, it's just like putting on my coat. So to come here and to be part of it. So.
Yeah, the thing about New Testament Christian church and that I feel is unique or special, every church is special, every church is different, is the fact that we always labor. Now, I'm a Bible teacher. I love the Bible. I love to teach the Bible. So it's very important to me to teach people truth, and I've always endeavored to do that to the best of my ability. But what I love about New Testament is we've always strived to make it a safe place and to make it a place where people can be real. A number of people have come to this church and said, you know what I like about New Testament? What you see is what you get. So we've never felt like we've got to put on airs or impress people or try to be something we're not. Sometimes that happens in ministry.
For the most part.
But we we just said this is who we are. And for some people that works out great, and they've loved being here, and we accept people for who they are, and I hope they accept us for who we are. And I think that's been a strength. For other people, it's not. They are looking for something different.
Right.
But the people that come here, we want them to know you're safe, you're included, you're special. Don't care what baggage you bring. Don't care where you've been. You're welcome to join us, and we will hopefully grow together.
Right.
Hopefully, we can help you to be all that God wants you to be, and in the process, we are going to strive to be all we can be. And we do that together. And that creates a bond, I think, and I think it creates an environment where people can grow, because it's okay to make mistakes and stub your toe, and it's okay to be honest and real about you're not quite there yet.
Right.
Because neither am I.
Yeah, it just had that, the church really just had that great feel of family. You know, it was always like family, no matter, all the people, and, we always kind of did everything as family.
And I got to say, we got to give honor where honor's due, and really, you're one of the most real people I've ever known. She doesn't try to hide anything or cover up things. I mean, again, what you see is what you get. I mean, Peggy, just, this is who I am, and you can take it, fine. If you have to leave it, fine. But that's been a real strength, Peggy, and you've helped me. And again, I give a shout out to, God's been so good to us, but He's given us so many great leaders, so many faithful people serving as elders and deacons and worship leaders, and just so many people over the years, just fantastic people to work alongside of us. And I've said this a few times from the pulpit. I have to deal with other pastors in my role as the Healing Fellowship, and sometimes you hear these horror stories of what their leaders do, or how their board meeting blew up, or people are up in arms with each other. And we have never ever had anything close to that. We disagree, of course we disagree. We're supposed to disagree. We see things differently at times with other leaders, but we've always loved each other, respected each other. You have a voice if you're in leadership here. I have a voice. And we'll work together to discern what God's saying through the various things that we encounter. And that's, again, I think that's been a strength, that we work together as a team. We've used teamwork to make this as effective as it possibly can. Because everybody, not just our leaders, but everybody that comes to this church, they bring their gifts and talents. They have something to offer. And we couldn't do it without them.
Right.